Hello again. I've been joined in the studio by the barrister and broadcaster Andrew Eborn. I don't know why, but nowadays I always want to say barista.
Well, you should do. I'll tell you what, baristas, what they worked out, this is why the barristers went on strike. They worked out for the youngsters, crime doesn't pay, and actually you get more money as a barista than you would as a barrister in your first 3 years. Absolutely.
I still don't quite understand why you get paid quite a lot to just make a coffee. I mean, I can do it quite satisfactorily.
Can you make a good coffee? Do you make a good...
I can.
What would you make?
Well, I'd make one of those, because I actually have one of those machines that used to do that, and then you poke it round, and then you just, I love
all the technical terms that go with this.
Yes, I could obviously be a barista. Yes, can I have the squidgy thing and the pokey thing? And then I don't know, the pokey.
A plunger? There's a, what you're talking about?
No.
Isn't it a damper or something?
Right, shall we move on? Yes, it is a tamper, I've just been told. It's a tamper. There we go. Yes, Tom liked the idea of a damper.
Yes.
Yes. I think it might be for fires. Is it something like
I think that's right. There we go. Hot coffee is going to be good.
Yes, and I can even do a fluffy bit and sort of swing it around.
Could you do the fluffy bit?
Yes, and poke it on the top.
Could you do a heart or something?
Oh, yeah, I can do quite elaborate paintings, yes. I did a whole one of Van Gogh's sunflowers, no. Right, let us look at the Saturday papers in a bit more detail then. Although this, you want to start off with,
there's breaking news, which is rather sad news, because Flybe has been placed into administration again. It's just been announced that they've ceased trading. All Flybe flights from and to the UK are cancelled and will not be rescheduled. So terrible news, devastating news for anybody who is left either waiting for a Flybe flight somewhere or trying to get home. I mean, this is the second time the airline's gone into administration. If I remember rightly, it was sort of March 2020, or thereabouts, wasn't it, just after the pandemic? They were sort of saying that was the problem. And it was rescued then by Time OPC, who put some money in and so on and so forth, and they resumed operations. But now it's gone into administration again, which is a real problem. What happens if people are affected? And I know it is devastating there. Visit the Civil Aviation Authority website or Twitter for more information, because people are going to be stranded. They're not going to resume flights, and that's the really sad news. So it's just broken.
Well, we should. I mean, hopefully we're going to find out. We're trying to get hold of somebody to actually say a bit more about people who are stranded elsewhere, because whenever we do these stories, you know, the problem is that you've got families who are desperate to get back for whatever reason. I mean, you know, it might be some work or whatever, but it might actually be for other family reasons. Yes, I know, and it's always.
And also, it sounds very trivial, but there might also be families travelling for holidays that they've saved up for years, and they're really looking forward to. It's just tragic.
It's absolutely appalling, isn't it? Because you're right, people are being desperate to get away, and if this now is your news, it's really.
You see, I never understand why, when you've got something like administrators having to be involved and a company being placed into administration, this hasn't just come out of the blue.
No.
It isn't as though they just suddenly went yesterday, oh, look at this, no more money in the piggy bank. Why couldn't they have actually
planned a bit? You're right, and warned people.
Warned people and said, or warned people and said, by the way, we will carry on flying until we can. But you might need to make alternative arrangements. Make sure that you've got. Oh, I don't know.
It will all be to do with the share price, won't it? And confidence in the share price.
And I imagine behind the scenes they were hoping to sort something out before it went into administration. And that's so often with these things. It's right up to the last minute.
One also has to question. This company has already gone into liquidation just over a year ago and been saved, and now it's gone again. One has to question whether its business plan was ever workable, and if it wasn't workable, why it wasn't changed to prevent this happening again. You do wonder sometimes about the money that goes in, only to see it all fail again. Other airlines work successfully, so what's wrong with this business plan?
Yeah, good point. Well, as I said, we are going to hopefully talk to somebody about that a little bit later on. Yes. You want to contribute on the Chancellor's speech.
Well, what's interesting about that, and what a lot of people haven't really commented so much on this, is that the original opening line that he came up with was actually written by chatbot. Isn't this fantastic? And he started with this: from the way we communicate and collaborate to the way we buy and sell goods and services, digital technology has transformed nearly every aspect of our economic lives. How do I know that? Because I asked ChatGPT to create the opening line of this speech.
Snappy, Tom. What's it called? ChatGPT.
TV. So it's all to do with AI, which I'm passionate advocate about. They're going to take over the things that we do in chat.
So I'm really not passionate about this. I think it's a travesty.
Right.
I think children now can barely write, and this is going to take away their ability to think for themselves, because to write, you have to think. And I think this is going to destroy education.
Well, you're not alone in saying that. Stephen Hawking said it's our greatest achievement, AI, but it's also our greatest existential threat. And you look at that sort of stuff. And what's really fascinating, though, in terms of how it's advanced, it's passed 4 courses in Minnesota, 95 multiple choice questions. It got a C+ in the law bar exam, so it could become a lawyer. It's also took a business management course.
Not a very good lawyer, because it was a C+.
A C+.
I'd have been chuffed with that.
But they tried, they were going to do it. What's interesting, they were hoping to do the very first case in America where they would have an AI bot basically representing them in court. And you were going to have one of these Google Glass things, and it would whisper how to respond to the judge. But they were saying that was contempt of court and you need permission and so on and so forth. So it hasn't been allowed. But AI is the future. If you can imagine every doctor's surgery around the world having access to the greatest research and being able to get early diagnosis and so on. So you as a doctor might appreciate that sort of side, the positive side of it. What's interesting, though, it doesn't think. And lots of people at the moment, so it's not sentient in that sort of way. I put in all sorts of things. I contribute to various programs around the world. And I said, give me the top stories, for example, on law and AI and entertainment. And it came up with 3 fantastic stories. It said, in Japan, there are people suing the manufacturer of an AI machine for nicking their copyright. It came up with a story about a man in Germany basically suing a robotic company because his robot companion no longer functioned. And it came up
Doesn't
with...
love him anymore.
We didn't love him anymore.
You could just go onto your Alexa, couldn't you, and ask you? That's one of the questions.
And it came up with an infringement of copyright in the UK. And I asked it for its sources. And so it came up with sources, Japan Times, the Times of it.
Andrew, you and I are of a similar age, and we've worked through exams, we've done our research without computers, we've been to libraries, we've read books. And as tedious as that is, it was actually part of what formed us and our ability to function in the roles that we have.
Yeah, you're absolutely. The problem, though, as I say, with those 3 examples, I asked further, so give me the references and the links, and it said, these are just examples, they're all fictitious.
Oh, my God.
So all of a sudden, this is the problem, is you might turn around and rely on it, but you've got those issues that you need to question.
Yeah.
It's great, I would say, for a first draft to point you in the right direction. I think it's the future of search, which is why Google are worried, because you've got a more intuitive way of looking at things.
Well, I was reading, I was trying to scroll down and find it, but I was reading on the Times today that the problem with it is, at the moment, it can give you, it will give you an article, for example. The downsides are that it will give you the benefits of doing something like, why you should eat broken glass.
Yeah, oh no, that's the one. And LeCun.
That's right. Oh, yes,
I can tell you. Just need to ask me. Forget asking AI.
Oh.
AE on AI. That's what you need. So LeCun, who actually works for the competition, he works at Google, but he basically said it's got a habit of hallucinating, and it gives wrong answers with confidence. So anybody who says things with confidence, you just assume it's right. So it's a really powerful tool, but like all things, you have to question everything.
You see, I don't know about you.
People won't question it. That's the thing. People love to
took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah, we know this, don't we? We know this from Twitter. People are constantly spouting stuff that they haven't actually read.
Yeah.
Yes.
They've just read a headline, and I quite often go back and say, have you actually read that article?
Yeah.
So this is the problem. And I actually think, where are we going to go with this? What will humans do?
Well, that's the thing when we look at, and one of the things that Jeremy mentions in his wonderful speech is about employment. Well, these bots are going to be taking over all sorts of jobs, so you've got to look at where we might be able to find those new jobs.
And so, some of them, and some of the jobs, you think, actually, maybe, for example, surgery.
Yes.
You have it done by a robot, but other things, perhaps not. And also, you do worry about where the truth gets buried, because there was a big spat recently about heart issues to do with COVID, and there was this sort of lots of people saying, "Oh, look, it's all these heart problems, people who've died because they've had injections," and when they drilled down into the figures, the people who were included who had had jabs and who died with heart issues included. It was talking about sports people.
Yes.
It included Pele, who died from cancer, and it included somebody who'd fallen off their bike, and it included various other people.
There are people who have been recorded of dying of COVID who fell off their bike as well. That goes both ways.
So, no, but all I'm saying is that I'm just saying that with the AI, depending on what you put in, where does the I'm worried about the truth getting buried, and I know
you've got to work on that base. You've got to question everything, and it's always lies, damn lies, and statistics. And are they dying with or because of? I mean, that's the usual sort of question.
We've all had that IT person say to us, "Rubbish in, rubbish out."
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's what it is. It's whatever is going in.
Oh, I see what you mean. Rubbish comes in, rubbish goes in, rubbish goes out. I also worry about when you sort of start taking all these things on, and AI, and then into the robots and all the rest of it, and you worry about despots and mad people just kind of taking control. And I think that's where I go.
It is Ex Machina and it's HAL, isn't it, in Space Odyssey? It's that scary stuff about the machine. But I can tell you,
for anybody who hasn't seen it, that's Space.
Yes, it's a great future, but you need to be able to harness it, understand its limitations, and I think the world is your lobster.
I'm scared.
Oh, yes, exactly. Lobsters in, lobsters out. I'd buy that one. And also, you were saying, though, about the fact that, you wonder about teachers, for example, having to mark things. I mean, hold on a second, this child in front of me has written this. Have you, though?
Yes.
And they haven't. It's already an issue. It's been banned. For example, in New York and Seattle, public schools have said you cannot use it because they've got no way of monitoring. But they shut it off. So the computers that they have at school, they're not allowed to have, and that sort of thing.
I was just about to say, they do have computers at home,
Well, they'll put them in the classroom and test it. But you're right. And I think the whole... And there's big issues about copyright. If you say, for example, Ed Sheeran, you put in all the Ed Sheeran songs, it will produce another song in the style of Ed Sheeran.
Oh, Nick Cave, they did that with Nick Cave,
and he was furious. He was so furious.
Awful. Those lines were really quite shocking. Even I'd have come up better than that when I was in a gloomy phase when I was 15.
But it will get better. They did it a number of years ago, actually, with the Flintstones, where they fed in all the episodes of the Flintstones. 2018 it was, and it came out with a really convincing new version. And it's going to... So I talk around the world, I get invited down to Cannes and posh places like that, talking about how this is going to revolutionise the way that content is produced. The real issue is going to be who owns the new thing. And that's the big discussion that I'm having as a copyright lawyer insisting that. Who owns us? Well, yes. And what are we going to do with all our leisure time when the robots take over?
Yes, well, it'd be quite nice to have a...
But we mustn't just play golf, because Jeremy said we mustn't.
Well, you mustn't play golf. Well, you can play golf, but you also don't want to be the richest person in the cemetery. So all of a sudden, it's fine talking about encouraging people back to work. Isn't that right?
I love that.
There you go.
Yeah.
But it's true, isn't it?
No, you don't.
So work out about quality of life.
Yeah. The trouble is, of course, is that would you want to know how long you'd got so that you could actually...
Yes.
So that you could
can ask the machines that.
So, do we want to know the answer?
We better go to
I think we'd need counselling first, and I think the counselling services are.
Idea of hell, I think, is interesting. That's an interesting segue.
Oh, the
I'll tell you what.
The
this is in amongst the other things. The Star. We love the Star because they come up with glorious things, don't they? Hell's demons tortured me with eternal Riri karaoke.
Now, for those who don't know, Riri is Rihanna.
Oh, is there somebody who doesn't know who Riri is?
I don't know.
Not your intelligent audience.
No. You're absolutely right. Yeah, so apparently this is a pastor in America who says he died and came back.
Yes.
And that while he was in hell, he was tortured by Rihanna's umbrella going on endless. Umbrella
is what the emphasis on the hell was the point.
It's the first obvious question here. Why did a pastor go to hell?
Yeah, that's even better. That's
I hadn't
so
even
much
thought of
better.
that.
Oh,
Thanks.
come on.
Well done.
So there's no hope for any of
There
us.
is no hope. So that's it. So all you good people out there, whatever you're doing it wrong. It's got to be good. But he went to hell. It was Rihanna. So obviously he said something bad about Rihanna because nobody says anything bad about Rihanna, do they?
Nobody
I
says.
like Rihanna.
I love
Sounds
Rihanna.
like a
She's
good party.
Riri.
And we always need an umbrella,
Ella.
Always.
There's a dance that goes with it, isn't there?
There really is. What would be your idea of
Well, I'll
hell?
tell you, I was thinking about it, and Dante, if you look at all these, Inferno has got all sorts of wonderful ideas about what could be a version of hell. So, Dante, for example, you could be turned into a living thorn bush and constantly eaten by birds.
Oh, that would be unpleasant.
Would that be unpleasant? He also, people who flatter in life, this is what Dante says, you will live in a sea of poop. That's what he says.
Poop. How funny, because I've always thought that was kind of rather a modern.
Well, I think that's probably, yes, exactly what that's. But what's interesting, if you look at
He's got
different
some GP
religious, every GP, it's instantly feeding me. Taoism, for example, they do fun houses. They have 19 different levels, which have varying degrees of mutilation. You get thrown off a cliff and you land on a sea of knives, or you get dismembered or crushed by a giant rocks or things like that. And that's also followed through in various other religions. So Hindus, for example, their idea of hell, to combine it, they have 23 levels, so a few extra on the other ones. And basically, they have one of them is constant diarrhea. There we go. So that is your...
That's a lot of
a lot of poop. Well, that is your
evacuation going on here. What
I
would
mean,
be...
the mutilation and the torture sounds a lot like living in Vikings, doesn't it? I mean, maybe
What would be your idea of hell? We're not talking about those. Actually, those really are unpleasant.
They are
I
unpleasant.
think mine would actually, if we were talking about music, it would just be heavy metal music.
Really?
All the time, I think I would go crazy.
Oh, you see, I think if you go on enough public transport, as I seem to be constantly on public transport,
People
it would
playing
be
their phones out loud.
just. Oh no, that's irritating. But actually, the tinny's leakage.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, talking about leakage and seepage. The tinny leakage from somebody's headphones.
It is annoying.
It's just because at least if you can hear a sound, you can kind of buy into it. But
no,
just
I can't. I am absolutely outraged by people playing their phones or letting their children watch Peppa Pig in a restaurant.
Oh, don't you like Peppa Pig in a
without
restaurant?
headphones.
But you can watch the movie and eat the dessert. It's
I
probably
will
good. It's
sometimes
terrible.
actually speak up and ask them to put some headphones on. So I think I'd rather the tinny sound.
I'll tell you the worst thing as well. You love your opera.
I
don't
do.
You?
I
You
do too.
I went to a glorious opera and I sat next to a wonderful place. I won't name what it was. It was a wonderful place. And I sat next to somebody who not only sang along, but they came along. They came along with a picnic. In fact, they said they had a yogurt, but they didn't have a spoon, so they were eating all of this during this glorious opera, which has to be your idea of hell. I would have thought.
No. Do you know what? I actually went to. I was at the Sydney Opera House.
Yes.
As one is, darling.
As one is. It was you I sat next to.
Yes, it was me. And I went to 3 different operas, and each time I had somebody who was irritating sitting next to me. One time it was a guy who was humming along to Mozart's Marriage of Figaro, that sort of thing. Then there was somebody who, as you say, was eating.
Yes.
And then there was somebody they didn't think it was a problem actually chatting during it, as though this was just sort of some, it's a dinner party.
So I actually went to Verona to watch the outdoor opera.
Look at us all. We're just so flipping cultured around here.
And I don't know if it's tourists or whether it's Italians.
Yes.
Just chatting.
Or Italian tourists. Could be both.
Oh, the Italians are famous for it. Actually, I'm going to ask you, the lovely viewer. Hello, viewer.
Hello, viewer.
Hello. What's your idea of hell? Right. Okay. You know all the details. You know how to get in touch. The usual numbers apply. Where is it? I did have the numbers earlier on, but anyway, I'm sure you know what they are. Oh, it's just right there, look. 0344 499 1000. Or it's talk plus your message to 87222.
Very good, you see.
I know. It's like I can read out loud and everything.
Hey.
But yes, the Italians, in fact, were famous for it. And if you go back, when opera first started, or when it's reputed to with Monteverdi, and then on it went. But people kind of did chat, and it's why, for example, Handel operas, they repeat it all the time, the awful inevitability, the da capo aria. I'm sure that's just gone over a lot of people's heads, unless you're an opera fan. It means that they keep on repeating it from the top and repeating it from the top, and that was because people were chatting and walking about constantly and having a sort of.
I think that probably is then the element, isn't it? For most people, the idea of hell is to take your real pleasure and getting somebody to destroy it in some way.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, they'd like to actually end this conversation about opera because they're just going enough now.
Let's talk about
really
yoga.
Bored.
Yoga's good. We've got some videos on yoga.
No, people like talking about things like football.
They do, don't they? Absolutely.
Yeah, apparently there was a big upset. Manchester City versus Arsenal.
There's another segment on that.
There's a whole segment.
We can talk about that.
We can talk about anything, I think.
We can roam over it. I know we are going to take a break in just a minute, but I do want to talk very briefly about it's on the front page of the Mirror.
Yes.
The world's 5 biggest oil firms set to announce combined profits of 160 billion. This, of course, at a time when inflation is. I don't know about you, but every time I go to the shops, I come away with my items and I think, have I left something there?
Yeah.
The prices are just ridiculous. I mean, people are going cold in this recent cold snap because of the fact they can't afford it. When you look at this, you do kind of go, maybe we didn't do enough of a windfall tax here.
Well, the bizarre thing is that if the government took down the price of petrol by 20 pence, that would actually take about 1.5 points off of inflation. Now, when you bear in mind what Jeremy Hunt said yesterday, that inflation must be the target, it seems very bizarre that they're not going for the very easy win. But we are just whipping the oil companies constantly, like this, like the front page on the Mirror.
The prophets of gloom, as they say. And it's that horrible juxtaposition where people have to make the choice between heating or eating. Yeah. And then you read headlines like this saying 160 billion.
And I think they've got another.
Ross the Comeback, is that what you're talking about?
No, it's not Ross the Comeback. I thought sure it was on page 3. Have you not just ripped out?
That's even worse than the oil companies.
That is what was on page 3 of my Mirror.
They're wonderful.
Oh, right.
When will they be famous again, is what they were going to say. Well, there you go. It is obscene. But is it? You've also got to look at the balance. And whilst I appreciate windfall tax and so on and so forth, we want to, and this is what Jeremy was also saying in this thing, to encourage business. So at the same time, profit is not bad.
Profit is not bad, but excessive profit, which seems to be off our backs, does
but on that note, I actually agree, and I actually think there are lots of companies who should be actually having a windfall tax, just a one-off. For example, every single company that made money from COVID, because we are now paying for COVID, we've got Pfizer making £32 billion profit per quarter on the back of just that vaccine. We've got all of the PPE companies, all of the testing companies.
What about those companies that provided PPE, which was just rubbish?
Fraudulent and rubbish and that sort of stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Look at that. We should absolutely shine a spotlight on those.
Yeah, and we should actually, if we're going to do windfall taxes, because either you are or not for it, we should apply it to anybody that profited from the mess that we're now in and paying for.
But only the bad ones, though. And then you look at that.
Profited, as opposed to profited. Yes, profited.
So profit is good because you want to encourage enterprise and business. Yes. But bad profit in a bad way is bad, and we should look at it. Sounds like Animal Farm, doesn't it?
Exactly.
4 legs good.
2 legs bad.
Take yourself to the knacker's yard.
Absolutely. Peppa Pig on your video.
We're back to Peppa Pig again.
Oh, we love Peppa Pig. That's a wonderful segue.
And just a reminder, if you would like to let us know your idea of hell, please do contribute. Oh, look, I've got the numbers. 0344 499 1000 or talk plus message to 87222. There we go. Take a break.